Yes, welcome to Flims, welcome to Switzerland, and welcome to our guests from Specialized. Marco Sonderegger, who is the director of Turbo Experience Systems, and Joe Buckley, fresh from San Francisco, who is the product manager electric, or the electric janitor, right, Buck?
That's right. Just sweep up.
Fresh off the flight, right? You literally are fresh off the flight.
Yeah. Got in this morning.
And straight into a pretty stunning backdrop up there
beautiful
in the
here.
mountains.
Absolutely.
Proper kind of mountain environment, right? Which
Yeah.
is perfect for your mountain bikes.
For sure.
Guys, thanks so much for inviting us here to Switzerland. I have to say, though, I think you've been kind of conspicuous in your absence over the last few years, especially from the full power e-mountain bike. You know, I think lots of people are kind of waiting for the next thing from Specialized. Where have you been? What have you been up to?
Well, look at this beautiful backdrop, right? Obviously, we were riding bikes, doing research, trying to understand what the riders want, what their needs are, and how e-bikes should develop for the future.
What do the riders want?
What do the riders want? It's going to take us probably 20 minutes to talk about it.
Well, I know what I want. I know what.
What do you want?
Well, I think, these guys, they want reliability.
Yeah.
I think, I'm sorry to put you on the spot there, but that is very important. You don't want to be kind of stuck in a place such as this, right?
No, definitely reliability is at the highest level, the highest list of the level, I guess. Everybody's talking about it, right? We're a bit more than 10 years in now, developing systems.
Yeah.
We learned a lot. So, working on new generations every other year, and reliability is number one prio.
It's funny, isn't it, Joe? Mark, I talked about it's almost 10 years since Gen 1 Levo now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I remember the launch in Moab. The bike introduced so many things: integrated battery, it had a display, it had an app. It was like the silhouette was like a proper mountain bike. And I think it's fair to say that it's widely recognized that you brought the first ever e-mountain bike to the market, right?
We did. Yeah, sure.
Oh, you did? Undoubtedly.
No, I mean, we as in, it wasn't me bringing it. It was a big team of people that's grown over the years, for sure, which I don't want to take credit for that. But yeah, I mean, I remember specifically when you attended and the kind of dilemma that it put you in after riding that, about what you thought about e-bikes and where the future might be going.
Yeah. It was a big moment in time for me. It was the moment we were like, do you know what? This is it. Like the potential for uphill climbing, massive amounts of descending, technical trails, and it's. I think it's fair to say that many people are actually kind of still catching up with that initial system from 10 years ago in terms of integration and I guess the kind of second gen of the Levo, which incorporated the top tube TCU. Mm-hmm. You had the app, you had a 700 watt hour battery, you had a full power motor, and it weighed just over 20 kilos for the S-Works, right? I mean, that's 6 years ago, and we're still seeing today people catching up with that. I think it's fair to say that, right?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. When we started all these bikes, developing them about 2014, Buck came to Switzerland, we rode a lot of different bikes we could get our hands on, and everything broke back at the time. And then we said, like, the first bike we do needs to be simple, as in simple, no big clustery display on the handlebar. We even had no remote, just had a simple on and off on the side. We made it as pure as it can be, right? As close to what we called back in the day an analog bike as possible. No gimmicky extra levers and stuff like that, that when you crash and the bike is still working. Yeah. And that's what people are still catching up to, because at the end of the day, it turns out that riders do want simplicity when it comes to cockpit, and don't want like some big displays hanging off a handlebar, which fall off at the first crash.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about reliability, we've touched on reliability, we've touched about simplicity. I actually came up with some numbers there a minute ago: 700 watt hours, 20 kilos. I think, is there a danger that the e-mountain bike industry goes like the mountain bike industry, chasing numbers, chasing weights and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's already happening to some extent, for sure. There's a lot of numbers out there today, and we as the industry are developing products so fast that riders are having a hard time wrapping their heads around it and understand what those numbers actually mean.
Yeah. And it's like, I guess, let's talk about what the numbers are for starters. I mean, we could look at weight, we could look at battery capacity, watt hours, we could look at geometry numbers, we could look, I think that probably the most talked about number is torque, right?
Yeah.
But sure. It is just a number, isn't it? And people measure torque in different ways. And what's your view on the whole torque business?
It's so difficult, everybody's claiming some torque numbers. Torque doesn't mean anything in that regard, because everybody can claim like a start torque value. And to me, it's like that doesn't matter, because if you claim a big number, that doesn't mean the bike rides good. Number one, it's the soul of the bike, the way the software is developed. Number two is even more important, is what I call the cadence torque. Once you're actually pedaling at like 60 revolutions per minute, that's where torque matters. And that's not the start torque everybody mentioning. So for us, it's all about engineering the engine where it needs to be, that you can actually clear those crazy difficult climbs.
Yeah, and I have to say, it feels to me we're still at the beginning of this understanding of the possibilities for e-mountain bike climbing, I think. And I think the motor is such a central part of that, isn't it?
And the geometry, and the tires.
Oh, the tires. Do you know what? I think the tires are super important. I mean, everyone's talking about, torque and power at the moment, but I experienced a few weeks ago an environment where I was climbing technical terrain 1 minute, next minute it rains, game over, I'm not going anywhere on my 90 Newton meter e-bike. Tire durometer, I think, is a key thing. It's like, it comes back to, the componentry of the e-bikes as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And that's, when we started with the first Levo, second generation Levo, even
86 fatty.
Yeah,
exactly. 3-inch tires.
Exactly.
I miss those tires. I thought they were a great thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not everybody agreed, but yeah, they did have positive aspects to them for sure. And tire technology's changed a lot since then. Just for normal tires, durometers have come a long ways, casing's come a long ways. So, I think in other companies are trying to understand e-bikes and make drivetrain, brakes, other components that are appropriate now for e-bikes. And it, in a lot of ways, it helps the pedal bikes too.
Yeah. But talking about reliability, right? The design and the spec of the bike goes hand in hand with what I call reliability too. You can choose tires which are 800 grams, or you choose a tire which is like more of a DH casing, which is probably 1,300 grams, maybe even 1,500. But I guarantee you, if you choose heavier, you go up on that mountain, you're not going to flat, you're not going to struggle trying to add a tube or add plugs or something like that. So my gut feel is the industry is chasing something now with weights, which doesn't make any sense, because people will fail with those components on the mountainside. They're going to be stuck up there with broken spokes, broken tires, cranks fall off, whatever it may be, right? So for me, it's about the durability of the bike, and don't chase the weight to the gram where it just makes no sense.
Yeah, I think like an e-mountain bike is the complete mountain bike, isn't it? It's like uphill, downhill, it's along and across. They're getting a beat. They're covering more ground in a short space of time, or they're covering more ground in the same space of time. Sorry. But actually, I've got to go back to the numbers, because looking back to that Gen 1 Levo, right? I look at the reach numbers on it now.
Yeah.
432
for what was that? A medium or large?
There's a large.
Oh wow.
There's a large. Yeah. But like 135 mil travel. I mean, what do you think is like? Do you think there's a sweet spot in terms? Do you think there's such a thing as people talk about all round? When you look at bike tests, right? I see the bike test, and it converges at a 150, 160 mil travel. Do you think there's room in the future to go down the same route as mountain bikes, to have maybe full power with using lighter componentry, have a cross-country trail bike, have an enduro e-mountain bike which goes up and down, and maybe like bike park e-bikes? Do you think there's room? Would it give more clarity to the riders in that respect, possibly?
I think to some extent, yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's going to get as splintered as pedal bikes are. but I think there's definitely room for more categories, for sure. The thing has been, you know, since e-bikes has started, the weight of the e-bike adds stability to it. So 150 bike, 150 mil Levo, for instance, is a lot more capable than, say, a stump jumper.
How much is a stump jumper these days? 14, 15?
14, 15?
Kilos, sorry?
Oh, gosh.
I just weighed my stump. It's actually
question.
14.8 kilos.
Okay, right.
With a good build, a trail build, like proper brakes, proper wheels.
14.8 kilos. So if you think about e-bike, an e-bike system is what? 2.83 kilos for a motor.
Yeah.
4 kilos for a battery. And how much?
7.8.
7.8 kilos. That's 22 kilos.
Yeah.
So where do these full power sub 20 kilo bikes come from? It's
We call them cheater specs. Baby rotors, skinny tires, and wheels which are not made for the stuff you ride. Certainly not. Right?
To be fair, we have done it. You know, with the first generation Levo SO, I spec'd cheater specs because I thought the onus would be on weight for the bike, right? And
that bike was 22 kilos, right?
No, much less.
17.2.
Levo SL.
Oh, it's the SL, sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking the first gen Levo, sorry.
That kind of, you know, after we launched that bike, I got out and talking to riders and getting feedback, and that blew up in my face because people are like, hey, you got the power. You know, why would you shortcut having a non-resi shock and, you know, smaller fork? I want a 36. I don't want a 34, for instance. You know,
I
so
like the 34 on that bike. I thought it was a nice bit of compliance to it. The thing is, we're actually getting sucked into numbers again, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not numbers. It's ride feel too, right? Because it's like
Feeling.
Well, the feeling,
feelings
right?
now.
Yeah, I like feelings. Yeah. I mean, that's what matters, right?
It is, yeah.
How does it feel on the trail?
Exactly.
I like the planted feel. I like the safe feel. I like the bike to be there for me when I need it to be, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I just like good pedals, like solid wheels, good tires, big brakes, good suspension.
Especially here, exactly, yeah. Here's a question for you then. I don't think it's unfair to say that, like I mentioned earlier, the Gen 1 Levo set a new benchmark in terms of performance and silhouette of an e-mounted bike. The Gen 2 did similarly. How difficult is it for you guys to sort of, in terms of the timing of a new product, to make sure that it offers something which is different and possibly of a higher level to the competition?
aesthetically or feature?
No, performance-wise.
Yeah. It's not easy, right? Well, every bike, I could have this analogy about what a product manager does. You start with this bucket and you have to fill it with all the features you want. And then once you start the actual development of it, some of it inevitably has to come out because all of it can't work together in the timeline or maybe the price or capabilities that you have at that point. So then the next project, those ones that got tossed out get put back in, and maybe there's other things learned along the way, especially working with our Ride Dynamics team in Auburn. Brad's team of guys over there have a lot of stuff that they're brewing up all the time. So those are sometimes good features that apply to e-bikes. So it comes together. We always have stuff in the back of our head. There's stuff that comes along the way, and there's stuff that's left over that you can pull from the previous project.
You know, like what we learned over the past 10 years is how people use these bikes, right? At the very, very beginning, we thought like, okay, that's how they're going to be used. And we never really imagined to climb like stuff back in Moab. We climbed Porcupine Ridge. We climbed Porcupine Ridge
it's
for
crazy.
like 20 minutes, and we're up there on the cliff.
But you remember all those motorcyclists?
Yeah.
They were sweating and they were huffing, they were puffing. And then I think Buck was the only one to clean that section. I mean, Porcupine Ridge is in Moab. It's an insanely fantastic trail.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
What I'm saying is that we learned how these bikes are being used, and so we started writing our product briefs against those requirements. And then what takes the longest is the validation process, right? To make a new product, to get the new benchmark to the market in the reliability and quality people want it to be from Specialized, it just takes years because we need to test a long time. We just want to test a long time because we don't want to go live with something which we are not 100% sure that it was actually tested to those requirements, to those needs.
Something you mentioned there was, how the bike's going to be used. Do you think, like, you guys, I know that you agonize over we've talked about the motor power and the software and how do you think we're still at the early stage of people's understanding of the capability in terms of climbing on e-mountain bikes, and what a technical climb is as difficult as a technical downhill. I mean, Buck was actually Sean Palmer's mechanic back in the day, right? I mean, we've all ridden downhill mountain biking, but do you think are we still at the beginning of the uphill era?
Absolutely,
100%.
Yeah, there's a lot left on the tree. That some of it's fairly low. I think we can get. I don't want to divulge anything, but there's
here we go. Well, here's the question. These guys will want to know this. When can we expect Gen 4 Levo? Because it does seem you do work in 3-year cycles, 2015, 2018, 2021. Surely it's soon, right? Big silence.
Well, I don't think we need the big silence. Number one is the bike we have right now in the market is still the benchmark. 3 times in a row, it was chosen by many readers to be the number 1 e-bike. The handling is still amazing.
The marketing manager is like saying all the right things here, Marco.
but I'm not. The thing is, I'm not lying. I'm having a great time on that bike every day. I take it out, right?
Yeah.
Still has benchmark
Mark,
connectivity, everything, right?
You guys are always ahead of the curve.
So, again, the most important one is that if we come live to market with something we want to be proud of, right? It just takes time, and we take that time. We're not going to rush a product into the market which is not needed, right? So we will take the time and we go live when the time is right and we can stand behind it.
Would you like to add anything to that, Buck?
Sorry,
would you like to add anything to that?
No, Marco nailed it. I mean, we have to be proud of what we're going to put in the market at the end of the day, right? Like, even if I decided to half-ass something, I'm going to hear about it. And
Mike Siniard would tell you that as well, right?
Absolutely. He's not going to beat around the bush.
Yeah. And what does the marketing director have to say? Oh, quiet silence as well.
Same. I think Marco nailed it.
Guys, that's a very interesting insight. Would you mind hanging around for the rest of today's show?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Right, moving on now to the cool places that you guys have been to over the last few weeks. Starting off with Captain Scar, last dry, warm day, great ride out on Mondraker Crafty Hour in Darwin Tower. And then we've got Isaac, age 9, on a spectacular summit at Van... Can you pronounce that, Marco?
What
one there, look.
Van Gierich.
Van Gehir at Fedus. That's in South Wales. Oh, look! It's on a 24-inch specialised Levo.
Oh, that's the kids.
Did you guys design that one?
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Isaac, here you go. Here's the gentleman responsible for that bike.
Thanks, Isaac.
They're awesome. My son is riding in one.
Actually, do you know what, guys? We're talking about cool places. What you guys have been everywhere. What's some of the favourite places you've been riding?
Man, BC is hard to beat.
Okay.
Yeah. There's so much variety.
Yeah.
Rock slabs, rowdy holdout.
And of course, Marco, you chose Croatia as the launch location for Gen 2 Levo because of the red wine, right?
It was both. It's like it had a beautiful beach, right?
It did.
Nice wineries.
Yeah.
And good trails too, right?
Yeah.
Like some locals built some nice trails in there.
And then finally, folks, this is Emmanuel, who's from working across 5 continents on luxury cruise ships to riding my electric SUV on the streets of London. Now, this is actually the high bike Fly-On. Now, there's a bike which captured people's imagination. Crikey, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, I remember.
That was a big statement bike, wasn't it?
I would say it was definitely a statement of the first people claiming some big torque numbers.
Right, time now for some feedback from you guys. Now, on last week's show, me and John Woodhouse from Merida discussed the possibility, are mountain bikers lazy? And the reason we started talking about this is the fact that when I ride around my woods these days, I see people on mountain bikes and they're pushing and they're stopping and they're chatting, and then they're riding and they're stopping and they're chatting.
But I mean, looking back 20 years ago when we would ride classic bikes and we would take some breaks too, right?
Yeah,
chat
all
on
the
the
time.
trail and bird watching, we call it, right? Be there and watch it. I mean, you're in the nature. It's like you might as well suck it all in, right?
But we had some comments from you guys. This one's from News the Music. Since I got my Cube eMTB fully, uphill is not a worry fear for me anymore. I have type 1 diabetes. E-mountain bikes give me an enormous sense of freedom. I can go to places I wouldn't have reached otherwise, and it's a blessing for my depression. I ride every day, can't live without it. People who go out riding. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And then Astot288 says, my mate and I ride 3 times a week and are out between 90 to 120 minutes each ride on my local trails. We cover around 12-15 miles on each ride and only really stop for a drink and catch our breath after a power stage type climb. Yeah, power stages are, it's happening, isn't it?
They're the hardest.
And then we'd also like to include this one from Jason Garns, who says, in terms of the riding time, rough estimate is 90% riding. I'm curious about your thoughts on Schwalbe's. Here we go. There's thoughts about question here. Thoughts on Schwalbe's new radial tyres. Do you think they'd be good for us heavy riders?
Yeah, I don't know. What I read about them sounds interesting. I've never ridden radial tires, so it's hard for me to comment.
It's compound, isn't it, really? That's the bottom line for me.
Radial to me sounds like it's how they put the inside radial, right? Is left to right, I guess. And I'm not. To me, it feels like they might give you like a swim feel, but we need to try them to make up my mind.
I think we need to, Jason. I think we need to all go out and ride some, and then we can give you some proper feedback. Folks, thanks so much for your feedback. There's lots of interesting videos coming up on the channel over the next few weeks, that's for sure. Right, bike vault time. This is going to be interesting. Guys, this is your first ever bike vault, right?
Yeah.
This is where these guys are chucking their photographs of their bikes, starting off with the Yamaha Moro from the Asturias, from Enrique. So basically you need to give it a nice or a super nice. Yamaha PWX motor. I mean,
I like the
nice.
color. I like the color.
Here we go. Watch this. Next up, Hackenstaff from Sweden on a... What bike is that?
It's a Kenevo.
What do you think, Marco?
Super nice, of course. You know, the name Kenevo was a joke at first. It's just a pretty funny story. How Kenevo came around.
Yeah.
And at one point, we just said, like, we named it like that for 2 years straight. And at one point, we're like, okay, let's just name it like that. Kenevo it is.
And that was it?
That was it. It was a joke from Brandon Sloan back in the day. Right. He called it the evil Knievel.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who jumped the canyons.
Yeah.
So at one point, he's like, it's Knievel. Because of the O of the Levo. We just called it the Knievel.
Oh, crikey.
It's a joke, yeah.
Right, next up, Vlad and friends in the Dolomites. Well, it's a nice location, isn't it? Hold on. Lots of mountain bikes. We've got a Radon in there. What else? Moondraker. I mean, come on, guys. Anyway, look, I'm going to give that a super nice. And then next up is... this... Right, who's put this bike vault together?
Theodore.
Yeah.
Super nice. Look at how that color looks in that field.
Got a stage.
I mean, in that forest, right? It almost looks unreal.
Looking good.
Looking good. Super nice.
Okay, right. Have you quite finished yet? Yeah. Right. That's it, folks, from the bike vault this week, because otherwise these guys will get totally carried away. Right, we've only got time for one more social clip this week. I'd like to introduce you, gentlemen, to the legend, which is Chris Ackrig. Now, this guy rides his white E160 in ways and places I think nobody else can.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, I mean, not maybe in this clip, because this is probably his like 30th take on a, but he's just done a raw video. It's absolutely spectacular. That's it for this week's EMBN Show, folks. Thanks to Flem Mountain Lodge for hosting us in such a spectacular environment. And thanks to Joe and Marco for taking me on some amazing trails, and also Todd Camatelli, who's been busy drinking double espressos in the background. Coming up on the channel on Sunday is actually a look at Merida's all-new E160 7000, a proper long travel mountain bike for the mountains. So guys, again, thanks so much, and look forward to Gen 4 Levo. See you next week.